Dear students, welcome to the online classes program of Higher Education Department Punjab. It is Department of English Language and Literature of Govt Postgraduate College, Attock. Here, I am Zahid, Assistant Professor of English. Well, gentlemen, today it is our second lecture on novel Goodbye, Mr. Chips. In the last lecture, we had just an overview of the novel, and in today's lecture, we'll come across the prominent persons, and places. The place in this novel is Brookfield, which is an institution where Mr. Chips served. It is an old foundation. An old foundation means an old institution, building, which is titled after the name of the village Brookfield. So let us switch over to the textual introduction given at the end of this book. Brookfield was situated in beautiful fenlands. Fenland is a lowland wet ground, mostly water is there, and was surrounded by ancient elms. Elm is the name of a tree, and the trees were grown in a thick cluster and they were sufficiently old enough. That is why ancient elms has been used. It was an open countryside. The area was an open countryside, and the school therefore had plenty of playing grounds. Because the area was sufficiently open, therefore there were many playing grounds for the students. It was, as Mr. Weatherby, one of its heads, observed. Mr. Weatherby was one of the head of that institution, and it is his observation that it was means Brookfield was an old foundation. It was an old institution established in the reign of Queen Elizabeth. It had started during the rule of Queen Elizabeth, and the role of this institution was as a grammar school. It never gained the reputation of Eton or Harrow. These are the name of the institutions of higher status than Brookfield. And of course, Brookfield could not gain that status. But it was not such a common one. It had a checkered career. Checkered means of multicolored, means different types of students passed their degrees from this institution, and its reputation varied from time to time. Means some of the time it got very famous, while some of the time it was taken as a common institution. Its main structure was built during the reign of King George I. Its main building was built during the rule of King George I, and it was during the mid 90s that Mr. Weatherby restored most of its glory. Mr. Weatherby was the head of this institution, and he brought back the glory of the institution when he was over there. So it was nevertheless a good school of the second rank. Earlier we have discussed that the institutions which were of the first rank or at the top were Harrow and Eton. Anyhow, on the second rank, Brookfield also enjoyed good reputation. Brookfield, so here in the next paragraph, we'll come across that which type of people used to seek admission and which type of personalities Brookfield produced. Brookfield produced judges, professional men, members of parliament, colonial administrators, peers, and bishops. So, those who belong to the ecclesiastical class, means church persons, colonial administrators, and common members of the parliament, professionals as well, and judges. Moreover, it also turned out, being in addition to those persons we have already discussed, including parliamentarians, professionals, judges, colonial administrators, and church related. So, in addition to such people, it also turned out merchants, manufacturers, and country squires and parsons. So, we can say that it was an institution for the common people. So, what the period was when Mr. Chips was serving over there when the first war broke out in 1914. So 1914 First World War started. So during that war this institution Brookfield also contributed to the war efforts. How? Quite a few of the teachers and students joined the armed forces. There was a goodly number of the teachers as well as students who had to join armed forces. Those who were young enough at that time, mature, and who were able to fight because the war broke out, so to defend the country, they were supposed to join. Many of them died for England. It is but natural during the war, so many people sacrificed their lives for the sake of their own state, and its grounds were also used for training purposes. The playing grounds of Brookfield were used for training the soldiers. Both during peace and war, Brookfield contributed to the glory of England, as England enjoyed the glory. So, whether it is about peacetime or it is about wartime, Brookfield contributed considerably in the glory of England, though most of the novel deals with the period of peace. However, we shall be discussing more of the time not about war period but about peacetime. So, this was a brief introduction of Brookfield as an institution, where it was situated, which type of personalities used to study over there, and what is the contribution of the institution itself. Now, switching over to the characters, and the main character is Mr. Chips. Characters are equally important in the novel as well as places are. So, the first character is Mr. Chips. Let us view the introduction given at the end of the book about Mr. Chipping, lovingly called Mr. Chips. The full name of this character is Mr. Chipping, but people enjoyed calling him Mr. Chips, not Mr. Chipping. So, Mr. Chips joined Brookfield in 1870 at the age of 22. When he was 22, quite young, the period is 19th century, at the end of 19th century. So, he was a handsome, impressively youth, fashionably dressed according to the Victorian times. So, as Mr. Chipping was young, quite handsome, he used to dress according to the fashion of the time. He was also he was able to establish himself as a teacher without much difficulty. The sentence tells us that quite easily he adjusted himself in that institution as a teacher and he faced no more difficulties. About his own personal life, we will have a glimpse of his studies. Mr. Chips was a Cambridge graduate. He graduated himself from Cambridge. But he was not a very bright. Bright here means that he was not an intelligent student, rather, he was an average student. He was a devoted and conscientious teacher, means an honest teacher considering his own responsibilities is conscientious. He lived and worked for his students and he had no other dreams and ambitions. What a nice sentence on the part of the teacher, attributing him that the sole purpose of his life was the contribution of his students or service of his student and service of the institution. At the very outset of his career, when his career started, he was happily able to realize his strong points as well as his shortcomings equally well. It means he accepted what were his merits and what were his weaker points. So he gladly accepted them. So by accepting the truth, one becomes, which Mr. Chips became, the strong points and considering his weakers equally. He this attitude made him stable and placid. So he became cool, calm, easy, and mild personality. Mr. Chips had no scholarly ambitions either. So he did not have any ambition of flying higher, scholarly, to gain maximum knowledge. Even after long years of teaching, he was not a profound scholar of Greek and Latin. Mr. Chips used to teach Greek and Latin language, and despite the fact that he taught both of the languages for a long period, but even then he did not cross the conventional boundaries. It means he did not seek profound knowledge. Although he liked to use some expressions as tags in his conversation. From those languages, he used to take certain idiomatic expressions, certain question tags, as at the end of statement we ask, do you follow? How do you feel? So such type of expressions in English language are called using tag questions. Towards the end of his career, he had a strong desire to write the memoirs and thus a history of the school during his time. It was his desire that he should jot down certain pleasant feelings about the past, which will become his memoirs, as well as he will be able to jot down the history of the school during which he served over there. But this could never do, sorry, but this he could never do, although he had jotted down some desultory notes. He made certain notes which were not according to the specific order. So they were in a disordered way, here and there. Although he tried to record those notes, but writing bored him. Because of old age, he used to get bored. Next, about his attitude towards practical life. Chips grew to be a disciplinarian and thus an effective teacher. He was a strong observer of discipline, and he who observes seriously any type of discipline becomes an effective teacher. He kept standards and upheld students' develop character. It means he did not compromise upon his own standards, and it was his expectation from the student to improve their character. He came to be loved by his students. So that is why, as he used to bother about the character of his students also reciprocally loved him. True to his salt, he always looked upon his old students from his pedestal. It means he used to pay respect to those who were the senior students, and he always expected that they should visit him. We remember what he told coolly one of the students. So there is a student who joined Brookfield, and on the very first day, it was the remarks of Mr. Chips, and these are given in inverted commas. Chips says that I remember your grandfather, he could never grasp his ablative absolute. calling him that your grandfather was also my student. So the expression of is because of old age he could not control his breathing. So quite automatically such like utterance is quite common throughout the novel. So it's no more of word. So he is telling to Cooley that his grandfather was unable to understand even the ABC. What is ablative absolute? Go back at the notes, expressions. So the very first word is ablative absolute, a construction of noun and participle in Latin grammar giving time or circumstances. Mr. Chis is of the opinion that he was such a common student that he was unable to even pick up this ABC of that language. A stupid fellow, your grandfather. It is the right of the teacher to consider anyone whether he is intelligent or not. Similarly, now another example. When Mr. Lord George came to Brookfield as a guest of honor, as a chief guest, this is what Mr. Chips told him. So, once again, the remarks of Mr. Chips are about chief guest, and he says that Mr. Lord George, I am nearly old enough. I have grown old now to remember you as a young man. And I can't recall your memories as a student when you were studying over here. And I confess that you seem to have improved a great deal. Definitely. You have studied, you have worked hard. That is why today you are enjoying the seat of a chief guest, of course. Then, about his interaction with his students. A common interaction. Mr. Chips endeared himself to the boys and the public for his humor. He was loved because of his good temperament. He was a humorous person, cutting jokes, which was quaint but without any malice. Of course, certain jokes were there which were repeatedly and he used to utter have grown as cliche, but people even then liked them. With the passage of time, his eccentricities came to be loved. Whatsoever he used to utter, whether people liked or not, they used to pay him respect. Towards the end of his career, he stood out to be an odd person. And when he reached at the superannuation age of his service, he had developed certain strange habits, particularly because he failed to appreciate new developments. It was the weakness of Mr. Chips that he could not appreciate modernism, progressive attitudes, etc. During the war, he was looked upon as a pre war man. And during wartime, people labeled him that he's a pre war. This oddity, strange behavior, became another source of humor. Because he was pre war, so people enjoyed calling him pre war, and he used to enjoy by listening such like remarks from the people. People liked this grand old man whose remarks and observations were equally odd and thus interesting. Of course, they felt that what type of remarks he is passing, but even then they used to listen to those and such remarks. People did not laugh at him, but with him at his remarks. What a nice sentence. To laugh at means to cut joke, etc., or having a hysterical attitude, but to laugh with means enjoying those remarks or those jokes. The boys looked forward to the latest from Chips. The boys always expected, Sir, is there any latest joke? This made him a very popular figure. So, because of this humorous temperament, cutting jokes, enjoying and having interaction with the people, this communicative power, he became popular figure. Everybody came to look upon him as an institution. So he was not an individual, rather he improved himself up to the extent of an institution. Switching over to the personal life of Mr. Chips. Mr. Chips had only one romance in his life. So, an odd small incident, but it influenced him a great deal. Great deal. It means the only romance in his life had very much effect and left its permanent mark upon him. So we can observe that the only romance had this effect on his practical life. It is but natural that quite accidentally he met Miss Catherine Bridges in the Lake District. The Lake District of England is famous for its scenic beauties and natural beauties. He wrenched his ankle. In this effort, his ankle was wrenched in a useless effort to help her. He wanted to help that girl, but the tables turned and she attended him during his illness. He was helped by that girl, in spite of the fact that she had very advanced ideas for Chips. They were soon in love and married. Of course, their interaction developed so sooner. There was love in among both of them, and finally they decided to marry. Mr. Chips had nearly 2 years of idyllic married life. It was a delightful married life, a very successful married life. She was a big positive influence on him. That lady exerted her influence, which made a new man of him. Means his attitude became optimistic. He was a changed man. His discipline improved, and his sense of humor bloomed into a sudden richness to which years lend maturity. It means that although he used to cut jokes, but now his jokes were full of humor, they were lively, they were enjoyable. His outlook also broadened, his viewpoint about life also broadened, and he became gentle and wise. It seemed that Mr. Chips has grown more wise. He felt strong and also became more popular. Because of his this positive or changed attitude, he got popularity among his students. It was she who lovingly parted from him. Now, the reason of giving the title of this novel is being described in the last paragraph, that it was that girl when she finally decided to marry, and the last day when she came to see him in his hotel, and she was now returning to her home. So when she lovingly parted from him on the eve of her wedding, it was the occasion of her wedding, with the words that became so popular later, "Goodbye, Mr. Chips." These are the words uttered by that lady. This she said, but how? In which style? In which manner? With mock gravity. So she was serious, but she was enjoying while uttering, "Goodbye, Mr. Chips." So, because of these words, this novel has been titled as "Goodbye, Mr. Chips." Gentlemen, this was about the introduction of Mr. Chipping, and prior to him, we had an introduction, brief introduction of that institution, Brookfield. So, we left another personality in the coming lecture. We will have the introduction of the rest of the characters. Thanks for happy watching. Stay blessed.